Hello, everyone out there in internet land. Today is the day of our fundraiser for the Game Academy, and we have a lot of activities going on today. This is our first broadcast of the day, and it's a really special one. I've got some two really amazing guys here I want to tell you about. Not only because we're working together on a cool project we'll talk about later, but they have put together a game which breaks a lot of in the standards that we're used to seeing in our role-playing settings, and I'll let them go into detail about that. But the game is called World of Alessia, and we have with us Jere, Manninen. Sorry, I'm mangling it already.
Yeah.
Yes, and Sonia. They're the authors and creators of this world. And I'm going to get out of the way and let Jere tell us a little bit about what inspired this game in the first place and how it got put together.
Hi, everyone. So World of Alessia is sort of my dream project that I have been working over 7 years now. So it's we finally released the book this year, and the World of Alessia was sort of born because I have always loved both the sci-fi and the fantasy worlds, but in World of Alessia they sort of mix and combine together. So that's the first how the World of Alessia was actually born. So and like Joshua said, that we try to break a lot of barriers in this one. I'm a family man, so I tried to design this game also so that a lot of kids can play it, because it has a lot of values that I would say that in today's world are something that I think should be promoted a little bit more. So while it's still a fun D&D or in the future Starfinder world, it does have a lot of stuff like stunning combat and all that stuff. So, but maybe Jay, you can explain it a little bit better, since
I was going to let you talk the entire interview,
yeah.
like no pressure or anything.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I really liked about Alessia when Jere brought it to me in 2017 was the idea that he had this not quite utopian society in his mind, but he had in his mind something that was drastically different from which is every run-of-the-mill fantasy sci-fi campaign setting that there. I don't mean to belittle anything, but I've had it with angry orcs and dystopian societies. You don't need to continually regurgitate the same concepts and ideas. And so he came forward with this idea, like, hey, we've got this place where peace happened, where there was a bunch of crazy stuff that happened. We had our apocalypse, we had our war with the sovereigns, and now people get along. There are still enemies in the world and around Alessia that surround it, but they aren't the tensions, the challenges, the storylines and narratives that he was trying to bring forward and struggling to say, these are the narratives, this is the narrative, and these are the stories that I want to tell, was a different kind of story. And it was one in which the heroes were constantly looking to collaborate and work together, to come together to face challenges from an outside world, instead of running and relying on the same kind of, well, the orcs don't like the dwarves, and the orcs, and the elves don't like this person, and no one understands why no one gets along, because they just ripped somebody else's concepts off. But he said, no, everyone just they get along, they learn to live past their differences. And
definitely. I think that there's a thing we fall into, not only as consumers of speculative fiction and fantasy / science fiction media, but as creators. I mean, because we all consume from the same trough, a lot of this stuff does get put right back into creations without thought. And I think that's really what strikes me greatest about your vision is that you have put a lot of thought into, well, what happens when, you know, we don't just assume that people are at odds with each other, or that they've been put in a situation where those sort of what we consider to be inevitable tendencies have been worked through to a certain extent. And so you're not just, you know, you're not in a tribal mindset where you're seeing everybody with suspicion. You're really looking at a different angle of how do we synergize our effects, and how do we
Yes.
collaborate, right? So
We
you've got a mechanism for that.
Mechanics in the game too, which I'm
Yeah.
proud of. Yeah.
And one thing that I really wanted was I wanted a lot of different species in the game. So how many species do we actually have right now?
The current
Yeah.
core book has 27 playable 5e species, which is kind of insane if you look
And
at
we had to cut like 5 or 10 species out of the book.
because
So
I can't do it.
Something tells me we'll see them in
You
a
will.
future
You will
supplement.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You will. You absolutely will. I just there's always we had a classic scope creep project management problem because we were all very excited, as were our backers, as to what we could put into the book, and we went a little haywire, and we kept looking for ways to cut things, but it came back down to, you know what, we'll just eat the extra 80 pages, give the backers a 334-page book instead of a 260, which is what we promised as part of the Kickstarter, and we just went haywire. So we're still trying to cut stuff back, but we've got more books coming. Trust us.
It's a really beautiful book, I have to say. I see if I can pull up an image or something like that in the background.
Yeah, he's holding it up. He's like, look.
Yeah. You know, well, here's the cover right here. And the art in this is just phenomenal. I mean, if you can tell us a little bit about who the artists are that have contributed to this book. I mean, like every game setting that we indulge in, the meat and potatoes is what's written into it. That's what right. We get to enjoy when we're playing the game, and what really matters. But you know, the sizzle is also nice too, and the art helps conceptualize and frame your expectations, right? When you're looking at the art and you're putting yourself in the world, that aesthetic, it helps kind of, you know, situate you. And I think that the art that you guys have chosen is very distinctive, and it's got some interesting influences. You definitely see some Eastern influences in it, and you're seeing also some things that might feel like definitely otherworldly. You know, and we'll talk more on that too. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the artists.
Yeah, about 6 years ago, when I had started building the world, I decided that I should start finding some artists to do maybe a couple of images a month, so that when at some point I would try to get some more attention for the game, I would have something to show in actual art form. So in total, I would say that we had like maybe 12 or more artists working on the book, but I would say that over half of the images in the book are from a single artist called Angel Huerta, who's from Mexico, and he's an amazing artist, and we are going to continue working with him in the future. So it's I would say that over the years that he did, I think about 150 or maybe 200 pieces of artwork for this book. So we really found our like sort of like a chemistry together to find the right balance with all the cool images that are inside the book. So
I know, and that's not Angel on the cover. That's Septimus, right? But it's still,
So you can get to some of this stuff on the inside here.
Yeah, it is such.
That's
Anna Del Cinco, actually, out of the Philippines.
That's also one of the artists in the book.
Phenomenal artist. She's a wonderful person to work with. So given the challenges she's had, the Philippines have had to deal with this year between the pandemic, you know, multiple just seasonal storms and everything, and it's just it's been it's a lot
tough
of artists and creative struggling around the world right now. So we hear about
this is great.
These folks.
Yeah,
but Angels.
Yeah.
I have to say that, especially when it comes to some of the art around the different species you've created, I mean, not only are we really taking
I love this image
the
so much.
human out of the center of this story, but I mean, there's just such variance of what we're seeing here.
That's Dio Mahesa, that image you were just on, by the way.
This one over here.
Yeah.
Dio Mahesa actually appears in a whole bunch of Kobold Press stuff as well. So he just did a bunch of work for them.
I love the.
And he actually did, I think, the very first image for this book, I think.
Really? Did he? I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I thought Angel did the first images.
No, I think because I hired a couple of other guys before I hired Angel, but they only did like 1 or 2 images.
Okay.
So it was the shaman that's actually not in the book yet. So that's
we had to cut art from the book.
Yeah, that's not a problem that people usually have, you know.
Right. No,
but
right? I know.
But that's the thing, is this is so rich. You guys have really, I'm gonna close this for right now. You guys have really spent some cash and some creative juice on making sure that this is rich. That it is a pleasure to take this book into your hands. I only have the PDF at this point. I have ordered the hardback. I'm eager to have that in my hands, and I like everybody, and I'm excited by it, because I just know there are books that you just treasure as pieces of art, and I think this is going to qualify.
Well, absolutely. I hope more people feel that way. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, what I was saying is that, it really brings you into this place, and you get a sense of, this magic? Kind of the magic of the imperial majesty of the idea. I mean, we're, Western Europeans, right? And it is been for a very long time our story.
Absolutely.
And I feel like while those elements aren't missing from this world, they aren't dominant. They're not the ones that show up in the front. Right. And that's the thing. I think that everything that you guys have done has been consciously chosen and consciously determined. And I think that's not something that is common, really, in developers. I think that, well, I mean, as the whole culture shifts towards being more conscious, the all boats float, but right. You guys are definitely on the crest of the wave. So,
well, I think one of the things Yeti, and I discussed very early on in the project, and there's a funny story about the art, but was that we wanted mindfulness. So the setting has this concept, this underlying idea of the various species living in harmony with the planet itself, and through that harmonization of their understanding of their natural self, their unnatural self, and the planet, their ecosystem, essentially, there's this kind of trifecta of interaction, and that with all three of those pieces kind of put together, and barring no outside influences, in those environments, like no conflicts or racial tensions or that sort of thing. I mean, you have those that you can't get away from them, but they had grown past these, and they were able to access their own kind of inner being and learn to evolve. And so there are species in Alessia that have, there are species that have evolved from other species. And so to talk about evolution and futurism, and to talk about both the science and the ideas and the societal requirements to achieve that kind of Star Trek-ish future, on a distant planet, you have to think about mindfulness. Mm-hmm. You can't think about mindfulness and not and talk about evolution. You don't evolve, right. You could evolve into a monster, but that's not the goal that we had here. And Alessia is very much about evolving into nobility and heroics, and I think I hope we delivered that conceptually.
I do. I think you have, and I think that one of the elements that you've worked in really, that because you are both individuals who are intelligent and really go deep on the reasons of why. And let's talk a little bit about the world of Alessia itself. The planet is very special. And not only is it special morphologically itself as a astrological object, but there's a there's a protection that's been placed over the planet, and that protection allows for certain types of evolutions, cultural evolutions that in another science fiction setting might argue against. So who wants to talk a little bit about that?
Well, one thing I also want to mention is that Alessia is a giant planet, so it's much bigger than our Earth. It's like 8 times or even more bigger than Earth. So there's a we didn't even cover all the planet in the book, but still the scale is so much bigger. And when talking about different species, the scale of how many different species there live in the planet, and how vast all the different places are, it's hard to imagine when you live in I live in a small place in Finland compared to USA, so that's even here it's hard to imagine that something would be like almost 10 times bigger. So but yeah, there is sort of like protection that happened after the War of Sovereign, and there's sort of like rings of heaven around the planet that actually protect it, but there are a lot of mysteries that we still haven't revealed all of them. So maybe Jay, you want to explain all that we can explain. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for reminding me not to reveal all of our gems. One of the rings of heaven. So just a short story on that is there was a prophesized event that happened in Alessia called the War of the Sovereigns. The war between the light and darkness, and the darkness in this instance loses. And this darkness that it's very chaotic, very just entropic. It's not even classic evil kind of. It's just this wave of entropy and darkness and just misgivings that happens before it should. And as a result, if things kind of go awry, but the forces of good are able to win, they're able to rally their forces and basically take down this great beast Galgari, this like dragon god who crashes. The gods that exist all around Alessia at this point decide in order to avoid continually like influencing the planet, that it was time for them to depart and go elsewhere. But to fulfill their promise, their charter, their covenant with the people of Alessia, they essentially take a small portion of their divinity and build a Dyson sphere around the planet. Like they build this giant, magically divine infused, moderated Dyson sphere that's called the Rings of Heaven, that essentially keeps the people of Alessia safe from hostile alien forces. And alien forces and that's one of the fun things about Alessia, because where we don't have any proof of any kind of life outside of our little blue marble in the black sky, the people of Alessia do. And in their second age, the Ishra crashed on their planet, so they were able to incorporate the idea of living in a larger universe very early in their development. And they're in the 7th century, or the 7th age for them now, where that happened at the end of their first age. So they've just had a lot more time to incorporate this idea of a bigger world, and those rings of heaven keep them safe from things like the Orgathi and the forces of Dominion and all those forces of the larger world that's out there waiting to get in.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea to have this civilization cradle, right? Where you're not worried about invasion. You're not worried about aggressive stances, even if maybe you should be. And there are definitely barbarians at the gate, so to speak. Right. And I'm not going to reveal anything that of content. I'm going to let you guys do that. But we can talk a little bit about the alternative side of that, is that when you have this civilization cradle, you've got the ideas of tribalism kind of melt, and you're seeing more like, okay, we're all here together. We're on this planet, and there's plenty of room on this planet, And there's special stuff about this planet. People are probably asking, well, why don't people or is everybody huge because of the gravity well? And we'll talk about that.
Right.
And I think you have an elegant solution for that. But what I really love is the way that you have these different species that when they come together, they have synergies that allow for them to be more of themselves because of this other race, or to share some sort of connection that boosts their capabilities. There's also this idea of bonding that happens in this game as well, and the bonds. If you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, is a similar concept that you have when you're bonding with magic items, but you've extended it to be a much broader concept. And I find that to be really interesting. You want to say some stuff about that? Maybe.
Yeah, do you want to tackle this?
Yeah. Yeah. So in Alessia, we have a thing called species synergy. That when certain species are, let's say, together fighting or whatever that they're doing, they can gain something from that bond with the other species that they have. And this is not always the same species, so they might have one species or two species that they have formed a bond. Usually something happened in their history together that formed this bond that links the two species together in much larger format than the others, and that is something that we are going to expand in the future. So there might be a lot of new species synergies that you can explore with different species. Maybe in some parts of Alessia, small tribes of these two species actually went through something together that actually made a bond between them that actually the other species don't have. So we are going to explore that a lot more in the future. So
it's a fun concept too, because like if you look at classic D20 gaming and a lot of the classic fantasy, like my generation at least grew up with racial hatreds. It was just that you got a bonus for attacking orcs because you're a dwarf or an elf or whatever. Like there was this idea that the net mechanical benefit that we chase down when we're trying to optimize characters comes from hatred. And so we wanted to find a way to optimize collaboration, cooperation, and teamwork concepts without relying just completely on, well, I'm going to get a +2 to hit because that's an orc and I hate orcs. I hate all orcs. Well, God, that sounds incredibly racist. Maybe you shouldn't hate all orcs. Like maybe we shouldn't just hate and generalize. And so we looked for ways to creatively bring these bridges together and show that collaboration can have a net positive, and probably has a better longer term net positive because it's constructive, as opposed to the other alternative where it relies on constant division, chaos, violence, and death.
yeah.
Right.
And and also one of the main things I really wanted to have was that if there is a species in this world and maybe somebody wants to play that species, so that's a possibility, because there is no group that you can't be part of, because if you want to play orc or whatever, you can.
Well, you can't play an orc because we don't.
Yeah,
have
well,
orcs, but...
well, we don't have orcs yet, but yeah.
But if you did,
yeah. But
I
if
think
we did, so.
Well, there's
But-
one species that I'm just gonna cut in because we're talking about this, is that and this is just what I've fixated on is the harpians. Because if you want to talk about a creature that is just classic monster in mythology and in most fantasy settings, it's the harpy. They really get the short shrift, right? And in this, they're a noble race. I mean, they've got an amazing history, and you see them more like Valkyrie than anything else. And so
there is actually a funny story about that. The harpians were not. I would say that they came to life about somewhere halfway through on the development. I actually saw an art piece about the harpian that was done I'm not sure if it was for D&D or some other RPG, but for some reason I really liked the art, and it wasn't like typical harpy. It was more like two harpians, like brother and sister, were embracing themselves on sort of like a really cool illustration. I tried to find that image later on to use as a reference, but I just couldn't find it. But when I saw that image, I was like, why don't we actually have a species that can almost fly, but has sort of this hawk-like features and all that stuff. So I really, in the end, it became one of my favorite species. So that's
Yeah.
That image has
that's
been
really
retouched too. Like the original
Yeah.
image was so interesting, but I definitely we went back to the artist and had it retouched to make it a little more brighter.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let me pull that out of there. Yeah, I think, and that's just one example. I mean, there's a lot of
Oh, show them the
familiar.
drifters. Show them our pink drifters. You're showing them our
Right.
pink drifters. It's funny. I want to, if I may, for a moment,
Sure.
Jere, when he just to touch back on the history of Alessia, it's kind of funny because when Jere first came to me with Alessia, he had a magi-tech website he had set up, and he had all of his art on one page to like inspire me. And he's pitching Alessia to me. He was like, blah blah blah, and he sends me this page, and the art was so good. I thought it was stolen from Blizzard, and so I was like, I can't work with any of this. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you can't develop, an RPG with somebody else's artwork. I'm sorry. And he's like, this isn't somebody else's artwork. And I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, no, I've paid for this. This is all mine. I said, this is to your IP. This because most people, they pitch and they grab concepts and they pull stuff from everywhere else. And I'm like, and I had to go back and I'm like, is this guy pulling my leg or what's going on? And then I went through and I was just like, he started explaining, oh, I had this illustrated to do this. And I had this to do that. I was just like, this is crazy, but awesome. And, just a funny side story.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the art that is in here is it really. It's not a surprise to me that you were concerned that it was stolen IP, because it really is.
It's good.
Amazing stuff.
Angel's a great artist.
Yeah.
It's just like
astounding. Yeah.
I mean, it's all great art.
There's just there's so many different folk in here, and so I mean, I think that when you're talking about the sort of racial makeup of the planet, the world of Alessia, you've got a good percentage are uplifted animals, so to speak. Yökai. Not actually uplifted. No, I'm not taking a Bryn concept directly, but if you get my drift, for those who are listening, it's you've got here. Let's show you some of that stuff here. Gorgeous pictures. But yeah, there's a sort of animalistic nature to a lot of the folk, the yökai of the planet, and they're really more central than these hairless monkeys that we've become accustomed to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a human-centric setting at all.
Right.
If you come in here thinking this is your traditionally human-centric, even though the Empire of Zion is largely that's the cradle of humans, and they're doing what humans normally do. They're trying to order things and not take over, but dominate their little part. But the rest of the planet, like the yökai and Sharon and up, across over Inferior, they've been doing their thing for a very long time, and they know it works.
Right.
So,
and you have more than just organics on the planet as well. Yep. You've got for those who feel their time is not complete, they can be transferred to a more durable physicality, right?
Yep.
And so it brings in the sentience. Yeah, so that's they're an interesting combination, I think, of science and magic. They feel kind of like Android meets Gollum type of thing.
Well, I think the concept was that they were a lifeboat, right? They were the concept for the sentience were unlike. So if and I don't want to speak about any other automatons other than maybe like the automata for runes, since we created those, right? But like I won't speak about other construct races, but these weren't built for war. They weren't built out of this concept that we're going to have drones, like two-legged drones that go fight our battles for us, because that's all part of their past. These are lifeboats for the soul. Essentially, when people are in situations where they're about to perish, they have enough of a command of magic that they can transfer the soul of a yokai or any other sentient being from that case right over into a sentient. And depending on how organized and ordered that sentient is, how fancy it is, they might get more abilities. It might be a better boat than another one, but at a baseline they're all about a little bit better average than most sentient races just as a citizen. So stat wise it's a little above an average human, and that gives the player and the character in the narrative an option to have a second chance. So that it's kind of like you're one up in a video game in that sense.
Right.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things was that because there has been a lot of technological advancement in Alessia, but in certain times not everything was possible. So you might be dying from old age, or you might be dying from a disease, or for some reason you just were injured so badly that the technology just wasn't able to save you. But they had another technology that was able to sort of like provide a lifeboat that if you still wanted to live, you could actually live in that new form. And of course, in modern times now in Alessia, those that concept has also evolved. So there are different groups of sentients that are actually trying to grow and expand their group to sort of like almost to a point that they are actually a species, even though they are still acting like a lifeboat. So, but we are going to expand that as well. So.
And as an educator and thinking about the social impact of stories like this, I think you can really bring in some narratives around body dysmorphia. What is it like to wake up in something that doesn't necessarily feel like you at first, and then the identity pieces, like if you've got a group of individuals who are saying we are sentients and this is our people now, it's not it changes the dynamic and your relationship to your own self. So it's really interesting.
And I think one story also can be that let's say that you have a matriarch or patriarch of your family that is actually dying, but he is or she's a little bit afraid to leave the family in his sons or daughters' hands. And he decides to sort of like stay behind a little bit as a sort of like a guardian protector and the guide on the background. So
those can be dark stories too. Like like what happens when you hang along too long, when you don't want to
absolutely.
Like there's all like one of the things that was interesting with
helicopter ancestor.
Yeah, well, see, we had some backers. They were like, hey, "You're painting this really white, light, really bright picture. Where do our challenges come from? If elves don't hate orcs, who fights and why? Like, if there's not this outsider enemy, like why can't we, like, and it's again that's that systematic. We need an other to project our problems onto, and so we had to like kind of walk people back a little bit and go, you know what, we do, there are aggressive species outside of the rings of heaven, but even in that instances they're complex, and we left that for GMs to play with later on, and we'll explore it later on. But we didn't want to start interjecting older tensions when you don't necessarily need them. And just from our way of example, humans today on our planet don't behave always in the best, most rational ways. So we have to assume that even evolved species that are collaborating are still going to have their emotional human moments when they don't want to let go, when they don't want to pass on. And so there's plenty of room for adventure in that space. It just doesn't need to rely on it's because of an age-old conflict, or whatever the case may be.
Exactly. No, I think that it really allows for some new opportunities in storytelling. We don't have to keep telling the same old stories. We have new settings
stop doing that.
and new arrangements, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of, there's space for this. I want to talk a little bit about, the dimensions of this planet and the fact that if you know, an 8 times, that's surface area 8 times, or
so it's a Jovian giant, and Jovian giants are normally gas giants, right? So Jupiter, Saturn kind of thing, and they have a problem with gravity, if you know anything about planets and astronomy and such like. And when you've got tiny little people on giant planets, they go like that, really, really flat, quiet. So in order to walk through that, we rebuilt the structure of the planet, and we introduced this concept of this kind of crystalline mesh that acts as a gravity well in the outer crust of, not a gravity well in the traditional sense, but a kind of a gravity buffer is probably more accurate, that sits just below the crust, and it occupies the what is the layer of the mist? It's at the, I can't think of it right now, but it essentially acts as like this gravity buffer, so that all of the pressure from the, that would normally reach the mantle, right, or rather the crust from like the mantle and the core of the planet, is graduated out, and it kind of forms this organic crystalline crystal lattice is what we call it, that really works sort of like the planet's internet as well, because it's this giant like crystalline spider web of organic material that's just regurgitating as it meets the core and the crust, and it just carries all of like the psychic and magical essence, and more importantly, it acts as the pathways for the various ley lines that are invisible but exist on the planet. And so like the Order of Astrana is able to access this, and as a result of this crystal lattice, it kind of dampens that gravity, so you get the real, you get the, I can walk as a human, as a biped on the surface, and I'm not going to get crushed.
Right. Yeah, I think that's it's a convenient, neat solution with some really interesting implications that you get to be turned into stories. And one of the stories that kind of touches on some of that energy might be coming in the future is a partnership between the Game Academy and Storm Bunny Studios.
I think it's a little more than might be. I think I hope so, since we started leaning into
yes, there's a Kickstarter that's going to be starting in about a week.
but it is also important to say, and without going too heavy in the science concepts, I'm a big fan of like the just a bunch of different science stuff, and I'm trying to think of the name of the show on Amazon right now. The everybody watches, and it's at the tip of my tongue. It starts with
Expanse.
Yes, The Expanse. Like The Expanse is a wonderful show. There's a revitalization, I think, in the gaming community where people want more STEM concepts, but we didn't want to just try to explain everything. And so the concept here is to introduce STEM concepts, be the beginning of a conversation, and let people move forward from there.
I think what's interesting. Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I also want to expand on what you said, because the planet is so big. Not only is the gravity the problem, but also all sorts of geological events that are happening in planet are actually something that poses a lot bigger threat to people living in the planet than in some other games. So the stories inside the game can actually be just about surviving on some place. So we have gigantic shard storms that can actually destroy small towns completely if you don't have the necessary protection from force fields and all that stuff. So
yeah, just because the society is working towards a stable utopia doesn't mean the planet's cooperating at all times.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that's really kind of, I think, unique about this setting is that it is a science fiction setting. It's a science and magic setting. So it's sword and blaster, spell and blaster concept, but it's also terrestrial. That there isn't an element in play right now, in the setting right now, where you're really, as a member of the planet, you're not going off on space adventures to other planets. You're really the
Not
focus.
yet, you're not.
That's why I say, but at this moment in time, it's allowing us to really focus on what it means to be of Alessia, right? And what that sort of energy is because, when we look at Western fiction, we think of the frontier. It's always about, where can I go because I'm tired of being here, right? And
House on the Hill has influenced a lot of Western thought for a very long time.
Right.
Yeah.
And but this is a world where there is a large amount of land mass, so it's not like everybody's crammed into one place. There's room for people to be who they want to be, but they're also not. Maybe because of that, and maybe because of the Rings of Heaven, there's not this desire to get out. That people are really
because the Rings of Heaven also provide a sort of safe haven that, while there is are groups that are actually leaving the planet and exploring outside it, that's not something that they have to do, or they can sort of focus more on the stuff that is actually happening in the planet itself. And there are still many things that are actually still causing problems that were leftovers from the War of the Sovereign itself, that are, while the war itself happened over 1,000 years ago, they are still causing problems to different parts of the planet. So different groups still have sort of like obligation to try to fix those things before they focus more on the outside of the planet. But there are still things happening in the background, so to speak, in outer space and all that stuff, but that we actually touch a little bit in the book. But in the future we are gonna explore that more. But right now there are so many things that are happening in the planet itself that we really want to explore more, and give the players options to find really interesting games in the planet itself. So
absolutely, and I think that not only are there a lot of opportunities because of the vastness of the planet and the diversity of the cultures, but there, again, this historic context, this lens of there being thousands of years of activity that have led up to the point where we're at. And there are artifacts and things, relics of times past, that can come back and haunt individual locations from time to time. And this leads into some of the concepts behind our collaborative project, Scourge of Charon, that we're going to be releasing as a Kickstarter. This Kickstarter starts in a week. The origin of this collaboration is really one of necessity on our part of the Game Academy, that we run a summer camp every year. And in that summer camp, we tell 4 distinct stories. Each of those takes about a week. Or in the time of COVID this year, we didn't have an in-person camp. And we didn't want to have 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That is not good for anybody, especially our children. Right. So we split things up into 2 weeks, 4 hours every other day. So we ended up with an adventure that's 24 hours to 30 hours in length, which turns out to be about the size of your classic adventure path module segment. It's a couple of levels. It's a good amount of playtime, and we always have a science fiction part of our storytelling. We have fantasy, science fiction, superheroes, etc. And we had been doing Star Wars as a property internally for a very long time, but and we also did Starfinder, but those things we never had any license to create with that IP. But with Storm Bunny Studios and World of Alessia, we've been given, as an institution, a huge gift, an unbelievable gift. You probably would never see this in any other publication relationship. But we've been given a continent, and that is the continent of Charon. and the story that we're telling in that space is a really interesting one that really talks deeply about not only scientific process and the way that you learn about situations, but it challenges preconceptions and really puts us in touch with some interesting cultures and life forms.
Yeah, it does.
And I don't want to give too much away, but we can talk around the edges a little bit of what we're talking about here. Maybe let's talk about just the continent of Sharon and what people expect to see in that sort of space, just sort of, geologically or geographically. I don't know who wants to talk a little bit about that.
For that, or should I?
Well, I can start, and you can fill in the rest. So the Shiran is actually a lot like I would say northern Europe. It probably is a lot like where I'm actually living in Finland. So it has it's not as warm even during the summers. Maybe the southern part, because the Shiran itself is really big place. Also, it's one of the large sort of like continent spaces in the map. So I would say the southern part of the Shiran is actually something like Europe, I would say, in terms of weather, but further down that you go to the north, I would say that it actually transforms into sort of like tundra and snow and ice and all that stuff. So the actual environment is actually pretty hostile to live in, but the species that have actually grown up in there have grown and learned how to survive in because there's I would say that all the white stuff is actually almost always in snow. So
right.
Yeah.
And the whiteness, that white stuff, we have a name for that, actually, right?
That's the vastness.
The vastness, yeah. And that is the setting of the main activities of the story of Scourge of Sharon. So we get to explore who lives up there, what's going on, what's happening that has sparked interest in this area, and who is it affecting. And we find out that things go deeper than we first think, and we have to do some exploration to find sources of things and the nature of things. I'm totally being ambiguous here, so but I think we're excited. The team here is that we've got some great people on this project. We've got some amazing, not just the artists. You've seen some of the art. The same people that have done art for the main book are going to be helping us with Scourge of Sharon, but we also have some incredible A-list designers and writers. Jay, you want to share some of those names?
Kinda, but like I don't know. You're a better person to share, but I know I'm kind of excited to be working with Steven. I've worked with him before, and we're going
Steven Radney McFarland is going to be working with us.
And considering
you're committed, dude.
Considering he's worked on 3.0, 3.5, 4.0, Pathfinder 1, Pathfinder 2, Starfinder, the dude's basically worked on all the big stuff for the last like 20 years. Like for me at least, it's like
oh yeah.
And I've I'm a smaller name, but I've been doing this for a little over a decade. So looking at the names that are gathered, looking at knowing that I get to work with some cool people, I'm pretty excited about it. So I haven't announced anybody beyond Steven Radney McFarland.
Right.
I don't know what your status is with other people, if they're stretch goals
or
whatever.
I think we definitely want to play our cards close to our chest, just to sort of, A, it increases the excitement, and B, I do want to make sure that people are cool with that announcement before I go sharing it. But
Steven will probably be cool with it. He was really excited.
If not, he'll tell us. But he's in. Because here's the thing: is that the type of creation that we're doing as a team is that sort of higher level work. We're not just churning out hack and slash adventures. Those have their place. I call that cheeseburger gaming. where you sometimes you just want a cheeseburger and you don't really care. You're going to get, ketchup on your hands, whatever. But sometimes you want to have a really nice meal. You want to have something that touches all the senses. And I think, not only is this adventure going to be one of those high level adventures from an entertainment point of view, but educationally, we are instilling a good deal of pedagogy into what the characters and the party members are doing and the way that the game is being approached from a game mastering point of view. We're actually producing not only our standard version of our module, but we'll be having an extended educators version where we'll have call outs and we'll have workbooks for our students so that when they're playing the adventure, they'll also be touching on some of these higher level concepts, of geology and of sociology and of biology and all of these things that really don't.
Too.
They belong together because we find in these encounters all mixed up together when we're exploring and adventuring. It's not like you're in a classroom. You're really all of your knowledge is brought to bear on these situations. So
I think classic adventuring brings a concept. So companies and institutions and governments are, and just with social media being as prevalent and influential in our worlds as it is now, the individual doesn't necessarily have the best analytical skills or deductive skills going in, and we live in an age where we're constantly and consistently marketed to. We live in the marketplace of ideas and values, and so role-playing games already by their very nature, by their design, all tabletop games requires a minimal degree of risk assessment, right? The player has to decide, do they go on and fight this foe or do they not? Is the foe, the person offering them the job in the tavern a good actor or a bad actor? I mean, are they being lied to? And a great deal of the excitement comes from discovery. It comes from going out and seeking those things out. So being able to identify those different encounters and say, this might be their kind of primary mode of operation. This is what their, what's their agenda, what are their goals, and what are they trying to promote. When the player can do a better risk assessment of their play environment, then that player who becomes a corporate employee later on, or who becomes a government, whomever, or just in their daily life, can also analyze better. They can go, wait a minute, is the thing that I'm seeing on the social media feed true?
mm-hmm.
We rely on fact checkers, and that's certainly, it's a strength to our society, but we need good analytical deductive skills as individuals. And so, to put it in my minor is in security, information security. So if I can put it in that language, if I can say, hey, this is a good way to analyze data, this is a good way to do a risk assessment, this is a good way to learn early on, or even at older age groups. It's not limited to your 8 to 18, but if you can learn those skills, you'll be a better human, and more importantly, you'll be a better participant in society, and we very much need that right now.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
this,
and I think Shiran is really excellent place to do all that, because it's not only a harsh environment, but it has species that have been living there since the first age. Like a lot of the yokai people live in Shiran, so there is a lot of when the players in Shiran actually adventure together, there are a lot of situations that they really have to work together to find to survive. To survive in that. So a lot of different species that are living in Shiran have a system that, okay, this and not only with each other but with the nature itself, because the nature in Shiran is pretty pretty harsh as well. So, and on top of that, we something that we actually haven't brought up a lot of is the Kaima spirits that are in Shiran. So those are something that have been part of the species culture since the first age. So that's something that we are really gonna explore when we adventure in Shiran. So
right.
It's so exciting.
It is. It really we're all, but it's and the designers are always having a good time with this. It's really to be stepping into new territory and to have new concepts to play with. It's like having new toys. It's fantastic.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, please.
And we have got to do a shout out for our backers, because they're going to see this, and B, they have been so incredibly patient. Like with 2020 being as insane as it is, and with all the challenges from the end of last year that we were personally facing in Stormity Studios, because I was finishing a degree and had a bunch of other things happening, and we rolled right into this hellscape of a year 2020. So our backers throughout this whole process with just developing, even though we released later than we planned with the 5e, and we're still converting Starfinder and getting it done, they've been phenomenal. They're still committed to all the new things, and they're already excited and asking questions about Scourge of Sharon. So like when you watch this, we are still working forward, and we love you guys for being so amazing and supporting us, because we've got so many great things that we want to share with you guys, and it's we're getting there.
But the team is growing too, so
it is.
This is really turning out to be something that I think is going to have a big future and some long legs here.
I hope.
We've got maybe 5 minutes to the top of the hour. If there are any watchers out there in the different areas that have any questions or any things they want to put out there, remember, if you enter that into your chat on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook Live, we do see that, and we'll be able to respond to that.
Hi, Bert. Hi, Corey.
Yeah, we got Bert Holcomb, my co-founder. We're all kind of in the mix here today. There's so many good things coming on the program. If you're just joining us right now for this because you've been brought in by different contacts, we're running a full day here for the fundraiser. We've got a talk, almost every hour. We've got games to play. We've got workshops. All that runs till about 5 o'clock, and then from 5 to 7, we're doing our main gala show with a live auction with really cool things in the auction. We've got a Table of Ultimate Gaming, one of the Elite Series, 3.5 by 5 feet play surface with the sunken down surface and the cover and all that. We've got a 3D print and paint of the recent Second Dynasty Kickstarter Starship Sleipnir.
Ooh, okay.
Which, that model turns out to be 11 decks. It's all 28 millimeter playable. So it is a dollhouse for nerds, and it is 2 inches tall. And I just actually put an order in for their light rigs, so we'll put one of those in. So it will light up at the engines, and you'll have a light up in the cargo bay. So you want to get in on that one. And we also have opportunities to be players at the tables of some of the developers and designers that we know, some of them working on Scourge of Sharon, like Stephen Radley McFarlane, some others that are giving us their time. Stephen Courtney from Dwarven Forge is going to be running one of his amazing games with his terrain pieces. All of this is remote, of course, so you don't have to be local. We're all still in lockdown, so we're taking advantage of it. And there's also this other thing that we've started, which we are calling Run the Dice, which is an opportunity for you, if you are a game master or a developer or designer and you want to show your chops to some of the people that are in the industry. You get to run a game for some of us, and then you'll get the opportunity to get some feedback. And to improve what you have, make some contacts in the same breath. So that's going to be up for auction as well. That actually may turn into a regular thing if it's well received and people have fun with it. We could be doing that, but this might be the only time. So come and bid on it. I'm going to go ahead and close out here. I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to, say some last words here. We got a couple of minutes, so. Jay, we'll start with you, then go to Jere.
Well, first of all, Josh, thank you for having us. You know, I've known you for a while, so I'm already a fan of what the Game Academy does. I love the fact that you're taking an opportunity to try to marry, these important educational concepts, STEM concepts, and the thing that I love, and that's role-playing games, specifically tabletop. So the fact that we're able to contribute our time and some of our efforts, and the fact that Alessia gets to be the baseline for this program that you're going to help, and given our values and that we're able to align those, I'm just really happy that we're coming together, and I'm excited about Scourge of Sharon. So thank you for hosting this, and guys, back the fundraiser, help people game better and learn better. It's a cool idea.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
Yeah, you have any last words here?
Yeah, I'm. When Jay first said to me about the Game Academy, I was like, "Are you like joking?" I would say in my wildest dreams, I would never have imagined that I would work with something like an institute like the Game Academy. So this is so amazing. I'm just so happy, and everything I hear about what you guys are doing and how excited you guys are about the game, I'm just this is why I really created the World of Alessia, because I wanted people to live and enjoy the game, and if it can be used for educational purposes, that's so amazing. So I do want to say, like Jay said, our backers have been amazing, and we are gonna bring you a lot of cool stuff, and this Scourge of Sharon is going to be one of them. The Starfinder, Creatures of Alessia. We have so much stuff that we are going to bring you, but it's
a lot. It's hard to keep up with.
Yeah, it's coming, but slowly but surely. So
Yeti handed me thousands of pages of stuff and concept and said, "Please put this in one book." And I went, we're over time though, so this will probably be better spent for a different conversation where we're not running over the time. So,
but so please back this fundraiser, and thank you, Joshua, for inviting us to talk about Alessia. So.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to have you both here, and it is a constant pleasure to be working with you on this project. Thank you, everyone who has made World of Alessia a thing, that were the original backers, that allowed this dream to become a reality, and your energies have not been ill spent. We are building more fun stuff for you. And it's going to be great, and stay tuned for more. So I'm going to close this out. We're a little bit over here, but fortunately nobody's bumping into us, so I've got a little extension there. But I'm going to rest our voices and queue up for the next part of the program. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and leave them in the chat. We'll answer them later. Please go to our website to check out the fundraiser. Again, we've got a lot of fun things happening today. There's a $5 suggested ticket price for that, but really it's all open and free. Donate what you feel it's worth, and it would be great for you to just be able to say hi and share this awesome day, the celebration of gaming we're doing today. So thank you all, and we'll catch you on the next one.